Out with the old, in with the new. President Obama has given his final farewells, and Donald Trump is preparing to take over the White House. And he's starting out with all kinds of fireworks. We'll tell you all about that and more on Politics and the People. First, the fireworks, the inauguration, and the confirmation hearings. There's never a dull moment, that's for sure. We'll explore what's going on with the transition of power with Jennifer Walsh. She is the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences and Professor of Political Science at Azusa Pacific University. Then, Pizzagate, fake news or a serious threat? We'll get a glimpse into the tragic world of human trafficking with Kay Buck, CEO of the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, or CAST. Plus, President-elect Trump says he'll reduce regulations and bring the corporate tax rate down to 15%. What difference will that make for small businesses, if any? Former congressional candidate and small business owner Jack Orswell gives us his perspective. I'm Tammy Devine. You're watching Politics and the People. Hello, and thanks for watching Politics and the People. Our first story, the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump, is coming up. How peaceful is this transition of power? Also, the confirmation hearings of Trump's cabinet picks became a bit contentious, as for the first time a senator testified against a nominee. And speaking of contentious, did you see Donald Trump's first news conference since he was voted president of the United States? Plenty of fireworks as he battled a CNN reporter saying his outlet reports fake news. Take a look.
Go ahead. No, not you. Not you. Your organization's terrible. Your organization's terrible. Let's go. Go ahead. Quiet. Quiet. Go ahead. She's asking a question. Don't be rude. Don't be rude. Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you stay categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir.
With me to discuss the Trump transition is Jennifer Walsh with Azusa Pacific University. Jennifer, as a political science professor, have you seen anything like this?
Oh, we are in uncharted territory. We have an unconventional nominee becoming president, someone who's never served in the public capacity. This is brand new territory for us, and I think we're starting to see some of the effects.
Now, you saw that press conference.
I did.
My goodness, lots of fireworks.
There were.
Do you think that, that was kind of a train wreck? Or, because some people are like, is that presidential, the way he responded? But then again, the CNN reporter was kind of shouting at him as well. Yeah. What did you think as you're watching that?
There were fireworks, right? And I think this, because it was his first press conference since becoming the nominee, who was successful, becoming president-elect, I think people expected a different tone. But this is now becoming classic Trump, where he has confrontation with people in the audience. He calls people out, even though he's supposed to be the one who's presidential. So in a sense, it was kind of predictable in its unpredictableness.
So this is like the new normal, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now the allegations come from a report from BuzzFeed, right? And what happened there was that BuzzFeed ran with the story about President-elect, I guess, being compromised by the Russians. Apparently, he was in a hotel room, they say, and some vulgar acts were going on with prostitutes on the bed that Obama allegedly slept in. What did you think? Did that story, what did you think about the original story about that? Did it seem real to you?
When the news broke yesterday, it really was unreal. And I think as we learn more and more, this story came out apparently months ago. It was part of opposition research from other candidates who were competing against Trump for the nomination. And no one really ran with the story because it really was incredible in the sense it was hard to believe. But I think it fits a narrative. So in my university, we're at Azusa Pacific, we are situated right between the Reagan Library and the Nixon Library, right? This is Reagan country. And I think for many people, this idea that the Republican president who's going to take office should be kind of Reagan-esque against Russia. Reagan was the tear down the wall candidate. And we don't see that with Trump. And I think there's a backstory that people are trying to fill, right? They're trying to explain why Trump perhaps is not as antagonistic towards Russia as Reagan was. And so me, part of it was fiction to fill that narrative.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's so much more I want to talk about with that, but I want to keep going because there's a couple of other things that we need to touch on. And one is the confirmation of his cabinet picks. Right now, they're before the Senate. The Senate's going to ultimately make the decision. And we all know that he's going to, like, all his nominees are going to get picked because of the Chuck Schumer rule, basically. I think, or was it the Harry Reid rule?
Yeah.
But the Democrats changed the rules before to allow a simple majority to pass the confirmation hearings. So Attorney General Jeff Sessions is battling this allegation that he's a big racist. And he kind of talked about it and said, I was trying to help African Americans, and this is how I was doing. He kind of laid it all out. How do you think he did? Do you think this will remove some of the doubts against him?
I do. I mean, so one thing that helps him is that he's testifying in front of former colleagues and friends. So he's actually in conversation with the Judiciary Committee. He was a former member of the Judiciary Committee prior to his nomination. So he's really in front of a friendly audience. And I think for the most part, senators who have worked with him for a long time understand that political opinions change over time. What he may have said in the 80s certainly isn't indicative of perhaps what he believes today. And he's even said some of the statements that he's allegedly made in the press were really mischaracterizations or outright fabrications. And so I think he did an effective job of contradicting some of the story that had been put out in front of his hearing. But it still had to be done, right? So he has to go through the motions. He doesn't get a free pass just because he's a sitting senator. And I think that his colleagues did a good job of requiring him to explain his prior statements and then asking him to explain what he would do going forward as Attorney General.
Okay, so you think he did
I think he survived
good.
that.
He survived.
I
Okay,
do.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Now, what about the Democrats putting forth a senator to testify against him and a representative as well? That was, I think people on both sides of the aisle are saying that was an unusual move.
It is. I mean, there's a collegiality that's assumed in the Senate where you're going to have polite conversation, one senator to another, and to have someone testify openly against another colleague is unprecedented. But the thing to remember is that the Senate is made up of people who are seeking election. They want to have their face on camera making a statement that will help them in the next election. So a lot of it is posturing that has really little to do with the nominee and a whole lot to do with what's happening in 2 years.
Okay, let's end on the inauguration.
Yes.
Lots of security. This is probably more security than we're used to seeing, right?
Not since the Vietnam era, right? So when Nixon was inaugurated, both after the 68 and 72 elections, there were a lot of protests, anti-Vietnam War protests that got pretty violent in some cases. So I think we're going to see security precautions, anticipating that there might be counter protests that get out of control, but certainly it'll be different.
The Million Women's March is going to happen.
Exactly.
The
next day. And then there's also been up to 2 million people who've registered for permits to show up either on support of side or opposition side. So it will be an interesting mix of personalities there.
Wow, talking about fireworks, my goodness.
Yeah.
And the surprising thing I think was that the last president, President Obama, the current president right now, he needed a lot of security. I think people thought he needed a lot of security because, they're worried about racism and somebody might come and try and assassinate and that kind of thing. But now it seems that with Trump, that might be as much or more of a reality, possibly, that there might be attempts on his life?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the worst case scenario, obviously. I think more than likely we're going to see conflicts between protesters that could potentially get out of control. But it's interesting, I thought Hillary Clinton's agreement to show up on Inauguration Day did a whole lot to calm people's fears. Because here you have a hard-fought campaign ended in defeat for her, but yet she's going to be by Bill's side as a former First Lady to usher in that transition of power. And I think that sends a clear message to the country that even though we can fight hard, we're all still on the same team.
Yeah, and I think there was going to be concern for a little while because people weren't RSVPing as fast, right?
Right.
So it was like, are the past presidents going to show up?
Right. Or is
but
it
now they are, right?
Right. I think everyone except for George H.W. Bush, who can't come because of health reasons, but everyone else should be there.
Okay.
It'll be a good show.
And finally, I'll just end on this. There were a lot of performers that turned down the invite.
Yeah.
Does that happen?
More often with Republican elect presidents than Democratic, in part because that's Hollywood aligns with the Democratic candidates more often than not. But Republicans are often draw from country stars and people who are popular in the Midwest, which is where their strength is. And I think that's what we're going to see on Inauguration Day.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. Coming up, since before the 2016 election, social media outlets have been buzzing about Pizzagate. The story made it into the mainstream media in December. Is it real or fake news? We'll explore that and discuss the horrible world of human trafficking with Cast's Kay Buck next. Many people first learned about Pizzagate on social media site Reddit under the Donald subreddit. That site has since been shut down by the Reddit CEO. And some posters on Facebook and YouTube are now complaining that those outlets are also shutting down the discussion. The term Pizzagate comes from references to pizza, pasta, and other food terms found in the leaked John Podesta emails on the WikiLeaks website. These are terms that the FBI has previously shown to be words used by people practicing pedophilia. There was also a human trafficking element and allegations by some researchers. With me to explore this and the human trafficking aspect of all of this is Kay Buck, CEO of the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and what's the other part? Trafficking. Yes, hello.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Now, I want to find out, how do people first get into this? How do they get tricked into human trafficking?
That's a great question, because a lot of people think that victims are kidnapped and then forced into a situation of human trafficking, which is really exploiting another human being for profit. But the reality is that in most of our cases, people are tricked or duped into believing that they have a better opportunity, or they're going with someone that they trust and think that they love in order to have a better life. And once they're in the situation, of course, they find out that there's just a life of exploitation and abuse.
And your job with CAST is to find these victims and then help them out, or how does that work with CAST?
Yeah, absolutely. We are known as a comprehensive service provider and advocacy organization. So our job is to identify cases of human trafficking. We help people who are trafficked into Los Angeles from other countries, but we also help victims who are American citizens, mostly girls and women and boys, who are trafficked into the sex industry. So our job is to provide counseling, case management, legal services, shelter, as well as a very unique leadership development program to help survivors inform the anti-trafficking movement. And one good example of that is a new report that came out from the Survivor Council from the White House, where 11 survivors of human trafficking from all corners of the country were appointed to this White House Council. And they inform all of the federal agencies on how they're working to protect human trafficking survivors in this country.
Okay, and I want to come back to more about what you do with CAST.
Sure.
But let's jump into this Pizzagate situation.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Is it fake news, or is there something to it?
It is absolutely fake news, and it's disappointing because we have such a hard time working on this issue and having the right resources being put to law enforcement and getting the right type of reporting and journalism to address this issue in the right way so that we can inform the public to help us in the community. One of the biggest challenges we have is that people just simply don't believe that human trafficking is happening in their own backyard, right here in Los Angeles or in towns and cities across the United States. Many people today still believe that it only happens in developing countries, when in fact we've had thousands of cases in Los Angeles alone.
Let's go back to what you as CAST do. There are many organizations that you work with, right?
Oh yeah, and thankfully, I mean, we could not do this work alone. And you know, we're located in Los Angeles, so we have lots of partners, more than 100 actually, who help us work on providing direct services, comprehensive services to survivors. But we also have just as many national partners who are all over the country, including Washington, D.C., to impact systemic change and public policy. So thankfully, it's an issue that is compelling for so many people from all walks of life, and we're able to put together a program that provides all of these array of services for victims.
Okay. We're completely out of time, but I do want to ask you real fast, how does a regular person help?
Oh, that's a great question. So please go to our website. It's castla.org. And you can start by signing up and following us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And in fact, today we had a blue campaign that is in partnership with a lot of our partner organizations all over the country, including law enforcement. And it's a way to raise awareness by reaching out to our respective networks about human trafficking.
All right.
Additionally, you can volunteer and certainly help us raise those resources that are so important to help our clients, survivors of human trafficking.
Kay Buck, CAST LA. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
CAST.
Yes,
The
CAST.
website is CAST LA.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, if you're a small business owner, listen up. You'll hear from Jack Orswell, someone who's been in business for himself for decades. He'll tell you his thoughts on Trump's plans for small business in the U.S. next. If you've ever thought about being your own boss and going into business for yourself, here's something you might be interested in. President-elect Donald Trump says he'll lower the corporate tax rate and cut regulations. What will that mean for small business? Jack Orswell, former congressional candidate and small business owner, joins me now to give us his perspective. Jack, sometimes people hear the word deregulation and they cringe. That was a big issue during the Reagan era too, wasn't it?
Yes, Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan have something in common. Neither one were politicians professionally before getting into a position of leadership. And deregulation, you know, it's a double-edged sword. Yes, it helps in some areas, but also creates other problems in other areas. So deregulation, you know, needs the devil's in the details.
Yeah,
define
that's right.
what is going to be deregulated and how.
Yeah, we're looking at Obamacare. They're talking about repealing and replacing it, right? And so there's going to be some deregulation there, I guess, in the healthcare industry.
Oh, absolutely. The question is, are we going to repeal it and replace it, or are we going to repeal it and then work on replacing it? And that's something. It's extremely 2,400 pages of rules and regulations. So which ones are we going to replace? Which ones are going to be repealed without replacement? And
Yeah.
I know a lot of health insurance agents are out there trying to, you know, kind of holding their breath. It took them 7 years to figure out where we are today, and now it's kind of like tearing up the rule book and starting all over.
Another deregulated item may be the federal minimum wage, right? Right now, I think it's at $7.25, something
Right.
like that. And you know, Trump has actually said he wants to increase it to $10 per hour federally. How do you feel and react when you hear that?
Well, as we know, the economy affects different people in different states. California has raised their minimum wage effective, I think it's 2020, to $15 an hour. Well, $15 an hour in California is not $15 an hour in Texas, and is not $15 in New York City. So a federal minimum wage may set, you know, the low bar for a standard minimum wage nationwide, but obviously states are taking initiatives on their own to raise them to what they feel is a living wage or a respectable type wage for workers in their states.
As a small business owner, how are you with the whole minimum wage thing? Do you think it's something that is needed and necessary, or does it hurt small business?
Well, my business, I'm in environmental consulting, and all my employees make above minimum wage. We don't start them, but they're not beginning workers. They're experienced people with various skills. So I'm paying, you know, the wages for those skills. I'm concerned that the minimum wage at $15 an hour is going to be a little bit too high for an employer, say the restaurant worker hiring that high school kid that needs a part-time job. $15 an hour for an unskilled person is going to hurt small business. And when you pay $15 for an unskilled person, then the skilled people are saying, well, you're paying him $15 an hour, why don't I get $20 an hour? And all those increases, plus workers' comp is based on the payroll. So workers' comp costs are going to go up, payroll taxes are going to go up. It's not just the minimum wage, the hourly wage itself. You have all the related costs associated with that.
Now, there are a few statistics out there that a lot of small businesses are feeling very optimistic after the Donald Trump election. Like 87% of businesses feel good about the future. Right. 67% plan to hire more. 72% say they'll increase workers' wages. And this is from a CNBC poll that I saw in the past few days.
Yeah. The poll, I'm a member of the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the NFIB. NFIB has it's small businesses, and it's like an optimism. They do a poll of about 600 businesses every month, and they ask, are you going to be hiring more people? Are you going to be keeping your staff the same? Are you going to be letting people go? Do you think your sales are going to be improving? Do you think they're going to stay the same, or are they going to be declining over the next? And the index in December jumped 7%, which is the greatest single monthly jump in the index since they started back in 1986, and it's very optimistic. So it's what it's saying is small businesses across the United States are very optimistic that Donald Trump was elected.
Thank you so much, Jack, for joining me. I appreciate it. All right, that was very interesting. Coming up, where did Sasha go? The youngest first daughter was noticeably absent during her father's farewell speech to the nation. We'll tell you where the White House says she went next. The Twitterverse was on fire during President Obama's farewell speech in Chicago this past week. Memes about Sasha Obama's absence sprang up all over social media. So, where did she go? Good question. As her father, current President of the United States, Barack Obama, spoke to the nation, the cameras panned over to where the first family was sitting. People noticed right away that one family member wasn't there, and they sprang into action on a search to find the youngest first daughter. Some thought maybe the first mom had grounded her. Others hoped she was blocking the driveway so the first family could, of course, stay in the White House. And still others said she might have been setting up Home Alone type traps for incoming President Donald Trump. So where was she? Administration officials said Sasha was taking a test at her private school, Sidwell Friends, in D.C. that she just couldn't miss. Now, during that farewell speech, President Obama touted what he said were his accomplishments while in office, including finding and killing Osama bin Laden, turning the recession around, and increasing health care. That's it for this show. Thanks to Jennifer Walsh with Azusa Pacific University, Kay Buck with the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, or CAST, and small business owner Jack Orswell. Join us again next time for more in-depth discussion of the issues impacting politics and the people. In the meantime, please visit our website, marshallbroadcasting.wixsite.com/mbgtv. Click on Politics and the People, and also visit our social media platforms for more content. I'm Tammy Devine. For all of us here, thanks for watching. See you next time.